The most powerful symbol of American military strength is also one of its most uncomfortable questions. For decades, the aircraft carrier has been the centerpiece of U.S. naval power, a floating airbase that can appear anywhere in the world and reshape events without warning. It represents reach, dominance, and certainty. But behind that image lies a problem few like to talk about, even inside the Navy itself. The issue is not whether aircraft carriers are impressive. It is whether they are becoming too valuable, too visible, and too vulnerable for the kind of wars the United States is trying to avoid. For much of the 20th century, aircraft carriers solved a fundamental problem of warfare. They allowed air power to move across oceans without relying on foreign bases. During World War II, they replaced battleships as the decisive instruments of sea power. In the Cold War, they became tools of deterrence, signaling commitment and resolve. After the Cold War, they were used to project power in regions where the United States faced little serious opposition at sea. In each era, carriers fit the strategic environment they were built for. Today, that environment is changing. Modern aircraft carriers are unmatched in size, capability, and complexity. A single carrier strike group represents tens of billions of dollars in ships, aircraft, and equipment supported by thousands of sailors and aviators. It can deliver sustained air operations, command joint forces, and respond quickly to crises. No other Navy operates anything comparable at the same scale. On paper, this makes carriers the ultimate military asset. But power at this level comes with trade-offs. The first part of the problem is visibility. Aircraft carriers are not subtle. Their size, electromagnetic emissions, escort formations, and air operations make them some of the most detectable military platforms on the planet. In earlier decades, that visibility was a feature, not a flaw. Being seen was part of deterrence. Today, however, visibility also means targetability. Advances in satellite surveillance, over-the-horizon radar, unmanned systems, and data fusion mean that hiding a carrier is harder than ever. The second part of the problem is concentration. An aircraft carrier concentrates enormous combat power in a single hull. If that hull is damaged or neutralized, the operational and psychological impact would be immense. Even if it is not sunk, forcing a carrier to withdraw from an area could dramatically alter the balance of a conflict. In a strategic environment where denying access may be enough to achieve political objectives, simply pushing carriers farther away can be considered a success by an adversary. The U.S. Navy is well aware of this reality. It is not a secret hidden from planners or commanders. In fact, many of the Navy's recent changes are quiet acknowledgments of this challenge. The problem is not that carriers are obsolete. The problem is that they are no longer invulnerable in the way many people still assume they are. Long-range anti-ship missiles are a key part of this shift. Modern missiles can travel hundreds, sometimes thousands of miles, maneuver unpredictably, and attack from multiple directions. Combined with persistent surveillance, these weapons reduce the safe operating space for large surface ships. Defending against them is possible, but defense becomes increasingly complex and resource-intensive as threats multiply. Submarines add another layer of risk. Quiet, long-endurance submarines can operate in areas carriers must pass through, creating constant uncertainty. Even the possibility of a submarine threat forces carriers to adopt more cautious postures, slow their movements, and rely heavily on escorts. This does not make carriers ineffective, but it does constrain how they can be used. Cost is another part of the problem that rarely gets discussed in public. Aircraft carriers are not just expensive to build. They are expensive to maintain, crew, modernize, and protect. Every dollar spent sustaining a carrier is a dollar not spent on other capabilities. In an era of finite budgets and expanding missions, this creates difficult trade-offs. The question is no longer whether carriers are worth having, but how many can realistically be protected and employed in a high-risk environment. This leads to the most sensitive issue of all, risk tolerance. Political and military leaders must consider not only what a carrier can do, but what losing one would mean. The loss of an aircraft carrier, or even severe damage to one, would be a strategic shock. It would dominate headlines, shape public opinion, and potentially escalate a conflict in ways no one intends. This reality can make leaders more cautious about deploying carriers into the most dangerous areas, which in turn affects their deterrent value. In other words, the very importance of aircraft carriers can limit their usefulness. This does not mean the U.S. Navy is abandoning carriers. Far from it. Instead, it is trying to adapt their role to a more contested world. Carriers are increasingly expected to operate at greater distances, relying on longer-range aircraft, refueling, and integration with other forces. They are being used more as command and control hubs and less as forward, close-in strike platforms. This shift reduces risk, but also changes how quickly and directly they can influence events. At the same time, the Navy is investing in ways to reduce its reliance on any single platform. Distributed forces, long-range land-based aircraft, submarines, and unmanned systems are all meant to complicate an adversary's planning and reduce the pressure on carriers to do everything. Rather than being the sole answer to every crisis, carriers are becoming one part of a broader, more resilient system. This transition is not easy. Aircraft carriers are deeply embedded in U.S. naval culture, doctrine, and identity. They are symbols of national power that resonate far beyond military circles. Questioning their role can sound like questioning American strength itself. As a result, discussions about their limitations are often cautious, technical, and understated. Yet ignoring the problem would be far more dangerous. Future conflicts, if they occur, are unlikely to resemble the wars of the past 30 years. They are more likely to involve contested access, intense surveillance, and rapid escalation risks. In such an environment, the ability to survive and endure may matter more than the ability to strike first. A platform that cannot be easily replaced and must be used carefully, no matter how powerful it is. This is the aircraft carrier problem no one likes to talk about. Not that carriers are weak, but that they are so strong, so costly, and so symbolically important that using them has become a strategic decision with enormous consequences. They remain essential, but they are no longer simple tools of dominance. The U.S. Navy's challenge is to preserve the advantages of aircraft carriers without allowing them to become single points of failure. That means changing how they operate, how they are protected, and how much is expected of them. It means accepting that even the most powerful platforms have limits, and that acknowledging those limits is not a sign of decline, but of maturity. In the end, the future of aircraft carriers is not about whether they will disappear. They will not. It is about whether they can continue to shape events without forcing the very wars they are meant to prevent. The real problem is not that carriers might be vulnerable. It is that pretending they are invulnerable would be far more dangerous.